The Loner, Trail of Blood, Chapter 13 and 14. So that was your plan? Mallory said bitterly into the stunned silence that followed Conrad's pronouncement. Walk in here, behave like a total lunatic, and get us both killed? Conrad smiled. He's not going to have us killed. He can see my finger on the trigger. Those gunmen of his can't shoot me fast enough to keep me from blowing his brains out. Ever so slowly and carefully, Murtaugh raised his hand and took the cigarette out of his mouth. Liam, Patrick, put them guns away. But Eddie, this is him. The man on the sofa protested. He had sat up and swung his feet to the floor. The heavy revolver in his hand pointed toward Conrad. This is the fellow from the carriage last night. Ask him what happened to Dennis. That would be the unfortunate fellow who had wounded with the pitchfork in his belly, Conrad thought. Dennis got himself caught, so whatever happened to him is on his own head. Murtaugh said with a sneer in his voice. But is it true, mister? You're Conrad Browning? That's right. You don't handle a gun like any rich man I ever saw. I'm not like any rich man you ever saw. Murtaugh leaned back slightly in his chair and smiled to himself. She told me you were just a weak-kneed pansy. I see the bitch lied about that too. What do you mean? Conrad snapped. Just that she made promises she never delivered on. Then why are you still honoring the bargain you made with her years ago? Murtaugh gave a lazy shrug. She paid well, and besides, she's dead. It's a good thing to honor the wishes of the dead in it. Conrad didn't answer. Where did she take the children? You think she shared all her plans with me? She hired me to convince that quack doctor to hand over all the records he had on her, and to make sure anyone who came looking for her would run into a dead end. Literally, especially if it was you, Browning. Where did you last see her? Murtaugh took a drag on his cigarette. At the train station, she and that maid of hers, who was more of a nanny by then, were boarding a train. Westbound? Conrad asked tensely. Bound for Chicago. Murtaugh's shoulders rose and fell slightly again. Where she was headed after that, I have no idea. Conrad studied the man's face for a second. You're lying. What would it profit me to do that now? I don't know, but I'm convinced of it. You know more than you're telling. Murtaugh laughed. Why wouldn't I tell you the truth? You're going to be dead in a few minutes anyway. That won't matter to you if you're dead first. The other man at the table said, Eddie, you can't let this son of a bitch talk to you like that. Murtaugh nodded slightly. You're right, Chris, but he says he's going to shoot me. Then stop him. I think I should. Murtaugh's hands flashed out, grabbed the other man's collar, and dragged him across the table. Conrad held off from the trigger as he saw Murtaugh throw himself behind his startled companion, using the man as a human shield. Kill them! Murtaugh yelled as he hit the floor. Conrad pivoted toward the man standing in front of the sofa. He and a cadaverous gunman were clawing their guns out again with blinding speed. The lightning in Conrad's hand blasted as the killer's revolver tipped toward him and roared. Flames licked from both barrels so close they almost crossed. Conrad felt more than heard the hum of the slug past his ear. The bullet from his .38 struck the man in the chest and knocked him back on the sofa, but didn't make him drop his gun. Conrad fired again, driving a .38 round into the man's forehead. Blood and brains sprayed across the cushions behind him as he flopped back lifelessly. Mallory had gone into action as well, scooping the wine bottle from the table and flinging it at the tall, gaunt gunman. The bottle crashed into the man's face as he pulled the trigger. The explosion added to the deafening chaos in the room. One of the glasses on the table exploded into a million glittering shards as the bullet struck it. Mallory moved fast to seize the momentary advantage he had. Whipping out the sap, he slammed it against the side of the gunman's head before the man could fire again. The man went down with a shattered skull. Conrad dodged out of the way as the man Murtaugh had grabbed upset the table and shoved it at him. Still loyal to his boss, the man tackled Conrad with an angry roar, sending them both to the floor. Landing on top of him, the man locked his fingers around Conrad's throat. The thumbs dug in, trying to crush Conrad's windpipe. Knowing he had only seconds left to live, Conrad jabbed the muzzle of his gun into the man's body and pulled the trigger. The lightning's explosion was muffled. The man stiffened and fell away, rolling onto his back. A worm of blood crawled from the corner of his mouth. That left Murtaugh. The gang leader grabbed one of the lamps and threw it at Conrad, who ducked out of the way. The lamp smashed against the wall, spreading flaming oil. Sereno kicked the door open then, still wearing his apron, even though he had a big revolver clutched in each fist. The weapon spouted fire and noise. He swept the room with lead, not caring who he hit. Conrad and Mallory dived out of the way. As he hit the floor again, Conrad caught a glimpse of Murtaugh ducking out through a narrow opening on the far side of the room and realized it must be a bolt hole concealed by the wallpaper. The fire was spreading and Murtaugh was getting away. Conrad had nothing against Sereno, but the big Italian tavern keeper was going to be responsible for their deaths if he kept throwing lead around. Tilting the lightning's barrel up, Conrad squeezed off a shot. The bullet ripped through Sereno's meaty thigh and dumped him off his feet with a pain yell. Then the Italian's men could get him to safety and chase everybody else out of the building before it burned down. Conrad scrambled to his feet, grabbed Mallory, and hauled him toward the opening where Murtaugh had escaped. Come on. They ducked through the hidden door and found themselves in a dark, narrow passage. Using the flames behind them to see where they were going, they raced through an open door at the far end and burst into an alley. Running feet slapped against the pavement to their left. Conrad went after Murtaugh, trusting that Mallory would follow him. The clang of a streetcar barrel caught Conrad's attention. Looking in that direction, he saw Murtaugh running toward the car and sprinted after him. Seeing the gun in Conrad's hand, women screamed and men yelled, but they all got out of his way. He saw Murtaugh swing up onto the streetcar and lunged after him, closing the gap just in time to reach up with his free hand and grab the railing next to the car's steps. He let it pull him off his feet and clambered up. Murtaugh was waiting on the platform and launched a kick that thudded into Conrad's chest, nearly knocking him off the streetcar. Conrad dropped the revolver to grab hold of the railing and saved himself. The fall from the streetcar wouldn't have been fatal, and Murtaugh would have gotten away. Conrad tackled him around the knees, and both of them sprawled on the tiny platform at the rear of the car. It was a desperate, wordless struggle as they fought. Conrad was bigger, but Murtaugh was wiry and slippery, an experienced brawler as well as a vicious killer. Spotting a knife coming at him, Conrad grabbed Murtaugh's wrist, twisting it aside. His grip didn't slacken when Murtaugh's knees dug into his belly, driving the air from his lungs. He hammered his other fist against Murtaugh's ear. Where did she go? He grated, his face only inches from Murtaugh's. His greater size and strength were beginning to give him a slight advantage. He twisted Murtaugh's wrist so the knife was pointed toward the gang leader's neck. With a heave, Conrad forced the point closer to Murtaugh's throat. He was yelling as he repeated, "Where did she go?" Kansas City, Murtaugh said. I heard her say that. Beyond that, I don't know. The point of the knife dug into Murtaugh's throat, enough to make a drop of crimson well out around it. The records she took from Fertel's sanatorium, where are they? Did she take them with her? No, she burned them. She didn't want anything linking to her to the kids. But she took them with her when she left? The children? Aye, her and the nanny. I never saw any of them again. The streetcar lurched to a halt. Shouts filled the night. People had seen the two men engage in their life and death struggle and reported it. Conrad heard whistles blowing and knew the police were on their way. Suddenly Murtaugh grinned. She told me if I ever talk to you to tell you that you'll never find them, Brownlin. She said to tell you that they lost to you for all time. Conrad suddenly went cold all over. Could Pamela have been threatening to kill the twins, her own children? That would be a monstrous thing to do, even for her. And yet, if anyone was capable of such evil simply to get the revenge she desired, it was Pamela Tarleton. Murtaugh took advantage of Conrad's stunned realization and exploded into action again, jerking his head one way and shoving the knife the other. He smashed his forehead against Conrad's and then, like one of the snakes St. Patrick drove out of Ireland, Murtaugh wiggled free. Dropping the knife, he leaped down and dashed away, pushing through the crowd that had gathered around the stale streetcar. Shaking his head to clear the grogginess, Conrad grabbed the knife and forced himself up. He had only taken a couple steps to go after Murtaugh when strong hands grabbed him from either side. "Look out!" A man shouted. "He's got a knife." Something hard smashed into the small of Conrad's back. Pain shot through him. His hand opened involuntarily and a knife clattered to the cobblestones. He tried to pull free, and as he did, he saw the blue uniforms of the men surrounding him. "You're not going anywhere, Puggle." The officer swung a club of some sort. Conrad tried to get out of the way, but they had him hemmed in. The club smashed against his head and another drove into his belly. He folded up and fell to his knees. He felt his arms being jerked behind his back. Then cold, hard steel closed around his wrist. He crumpled the rest of the way to the street, and the angry shouting around him faded, washing away on the black tide of pain. And then welcome, Oblivion. Chapter 14. A balding, thick-bodied police inspector named McLaughlin glared across the desk at Conrad. "You're lucky you got out of the place alive." Conrad rubbed his wrist where the handcuffs had trapped his skin. "I know. I guess I wasn't quite thinking straight." His voice hardened. "A man gets that way when his children are stolen from him." We've only your word for that," McLaughlin pointed out. "Dr. Vernon Futrell is an important man in his town, and he claims you're delusional. He says you showed up at his sanatorium this afternoon and tried to attack it with some sort of crack-brained brute. He had to summon his orderlies because he feared for his life." "Futrell is lying." McLaughlin leaned back in his chair and spread his meaty hands. "Where's the proof of that? He offered to let us go through his records. He swears we won't find anything to indicate your fiancé was ever there, let alone gave birth to any children while a patient under his care." Conrad's jaw tightened. He would have honored the bargain he made with Futrell, but after being arrested, he'd known that spilling the whole story was probably his best chance of getting out of there. He had found out everything in Boston. He was going to find out. The trail now led to Kansas City. Unfortunately, as McLaughlin pointed out, he had no proof of anything. There were also dead men at Serenos to be accounted for, not to mention heavy damage from a fire. Conrad had kept his mouth shut about the dead men, but clearly there was a possible connection between him and them, since he'd been seen fighting with Eddie Murtaugh, the employer. Nor had he given away Jack Mallory's identity. The private detective had been able to slip away from the scene without the police nabbing him. Mallory and Arturo represented Conrad's best hope of getting him out of that jam. I've told you, I had reason to believe that Murtaugh knew something about the whereabouts of my children. He got away from me at Sereno's and I went after him. We argued on the streetcar. Tried to kill each other is more like it, according to the testimony of the witnesses, McLaughlin put in. Conrad shrugged. It was a heated argument. Speaking of heated, you still claim you don't know anything about the fire at that dive of Sereno's. Everything was fine there when I left to go after Murtaugh. Conrad lied. Does Sereno say otherwise? The beefy policeman growled. Sereno never says anything good or bad. He never sees anything or hears anything either. He's all three monkeys rolled up into one. Then you don't have any proof that I did anything except get mixed up in an altercation on a streetcar. Charge me with disturbing the peace, I'll pay the fine. How about assault and attempted murder? It was Conrad's turn to spread his hands. Who did I try to kill? Has Murtaugh or anyone else come forward to press charges against me? Eddie Murtaugh talked to the coppers of his own free will. McLaughlin gave a snort of disgust. That's not likely to happen, and you know it. Conrad reached up and gingerly fingered the knot on his head when he'd been clouted with a billy club and knocked out. When my attorney gets here, there'll be more discussion about assaulted charges, and I'll be the one bringing the complaint. McLaughlin slapped the palm down on the desk. My men were trying to put a suspect in custody. A suspect who had a knife. Mind you. Nobody assaulted you. I know you're a rich man and used to throwing your weight around, Browning, but that don't mean shit to me. Suit yourself, Inspector. McLaughlin's growl darkened. Get out of here, he growled. You're releasing me? I said get out, didn't I? What more do you need to hear? Conrad got to his feet. He thought about saying that an apology for the rough treatment would be nice, but he decided not to press his luck. You might look into some of the things that go on at Fertrell's Sanatorium, he said. Nobody's looking into the activities of a well-respected man like Dr. Fertrell. McLaughlin snapped. Conrad knew it was useless to pursue that angle. Anyway, he found out what he wanted to know from Fertrell. Trying to cause more trouble for the doctor wouldn't solve any useful purpose. He had just turned toward the door when it opened. A well-dressed man with graying hair and a neatly clipped Van Dyke beard came in. Conrad smiled in recognition. Hello, Charles. The newcomer gave him a curt nod. Charles Harcourt was one of Boston's leading attorneys, the senior partner in exclusive practice. He had been one of the many lawyers represented the Browning financial interests for years. Harcourt fixed steely eyes on McLaughlin and demanded, Inspector, you are aware that Mr. Browning is one of Boston's leading citizens? He hasn't lived here for several years, McLaughlin said. Anyway, I just released him. There will be no charges brought against him. Harcourt glanced over at Conrad. Is that true? It is, Conrad replied with a nod. I was just about to leave. Well then, I suppose my presence here wasn't needed after all. Conrad gripped the lawyer's arm. But I'm very glad to see you anyway, Charles. I need to fill you in on everything that's been happening. Your personal secretary gave me some of the details. I'd like to hear more. Good old Arturo, Conrad thought. Mallory must have gone back to the hotel with the news that Conrad had been arrested, and Arturo had sprung into action and summoned Harcourt. As they turned toward the door, McLaughlin warned from behind the desk. Tell your client to keep his nose clean the rest of the time he's here in Boston, Counselor. Don't worry about that, Conrad said. I'll be leaving as soon as I can. I've had enough of this town to last me for a long time. Arturo and Mallory were waiting at the hotel when Conrad and Harcourt got there. Arturo paced patiently back and forth on the expensive rug while Mallory sprawled in an armchair, apparently at ease but with a worried frown on his rugged face. Mallory got to his feet and said without preamble, I didn't want to leave you there, but I didn't see what good I could do you by getting arrested too. Conrad nodded. You did the right thing, Jack. When I came to my senses, one of the first things I hoped was that you had come back here to tell Arturo what happened. Did Murtaugh tell you anything before he got away? He did. Harcourt held up a hand to stop Conrad from going on. Why don't you tell the story from the beginning, so I don't get any more confused than I already am? He suggested. Conrad complied. He, Harcourt, and Mallory sat down, and Arturo brought snifters of brandy for them before helping himself to one as well. Conrad ran through the entire affair, holding back nothing. He paused from time to time to sip. For the smooth liquor, its bracing effect was welcome after the day he had. When Conrad was finished, Charles said, "What a terrible thing to find out. It's been difficult." Conrad acknowledged with a slight nod of his head. "Are you saying it's true?" "As you said, there's no real evidence that it happened, other than the testimony of several people." "That's enough for me. You can see how it all ties together." "Yes, it does," Harcourt admitted. "Perhaps I can do something to help you. I might be able to bring some pressure to bear on Futrell." Conrad stopped the attorney with a shake of his head. There's a good chance some of Futrell's patients are also clients of your firm. Charles Stearn, everything else could come back to hurt you. I don't want that. You know what a high opinion I had of your mother, Conrad. I don't mind. Well, we'll let it rest. No, we'll let it rest. A solemn smile touched Conrad's lip. "I wouldn't mind knowing what names Pamela gave them, but let's face it, she could have changed their names a dozen times before she hit them, wherever she hit them." Harcourt frowned. "I might be able to learn more about the maid Pamela had with her. I don't know if that would be any help." "It can't help," Conrad said. Harcourt sighed. "To think that at one time I represented the Tarleton family. I was shocked when I found out that Clark was little more than a common criminal." "There's nothing common about the Tarletons," Conrad said. "Evidently not. From what you told me about Pamela and her cousin Roger, the whole lot of them seem quite mad. But there's a method to their madness, and more important, a motivation. Revenge is what Pamela lived for, and died for," Harcourt said quietly. Conrad nodded. "And died for." A grim silence hung over the luxurious sitting room for a moment. Mallory broke it by clearing his throat and saying, "I can try to find Murtaugh if you want, Mr. Browning. He's probably gone to ground somewhere in South Boston. It's a cinch he won't be going back to the Serenos anytime soon. That big-nosed eye-tie will put a slug in him on sight." "No, that's all right, Jack. I'm confident Murtaugh told me everything he knows. He seemed to have a little bit of a grudge against Pamela himself, probably because she had promised to share her bed with him if he did what she wanted, and then gone back on her word." Conrad must. "That struck him as something Pamela would do." "You seem to be a competent investigator, Mr. Mallory," Harcourt said. "My firm might be able to throw some work your way." Mallory nodded. "I like that. I'll do a good job for you." The lawyer turned back to Conrad. "What do you plan to do now?" "There's a westbound train leaving for Chicago at 10 o'clock in the morning," Conrad said. "From there I can make a connection to Kansas City. It's become quite a popular city in recent years," Harcourt pointed out. "How do you intend to pick up Pamela's trail once you get there?" Before Conrad could answer, Arturo said, "Knowing Mr. Browning, I suspect he'll barge in, wave some guns around, and demand answers of everyone he meets." Harcourt found what he undoubtedly considered a show of disrespect from a servant, but Conrad laughed. "It seems to have worked so far, hasn't it?"